Hi, it's Alex. I want to take a look at Matthew 13, 1 through 3 today with a focus on the relationship of action and result. Action result, you remember, is the relationship between an action and a consequence or a result which accompanies that action. So we're looking for words, keywords like so that, with the result that. And the main thing beyond the keywords is we're looking for a natural consequence or a result that accompanies an action. So let me give you an example of that here in Matthew 13, 1 through 3. Let me read this to you. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea, and great crowds gathered about him, so that, here's our main keywords that we're looking for, so that he got into a boat and sat down. And the whole crowd stood on the beach, and he told them many things in parables. And the parable goes on there in Matthew chapter 13. So let me show you how I broke this down into its propositions. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. And we have a lot of ands, a lot of series seemingly in these three verses. And great crowds gathered about him, so that he got into a boat and sat down. And the whole crowd stood on the beach, and he told them many things in parables. So the first thing that I see here as we begin to arc this out is this and in this first sentence, which points me to a short series right off the bat. Same day Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. And then in the next sentence, we have, and great crowds gathered about him, so that he got into a boat and sat down. So we have this statement we're looking for of action and result here. But before we define that, we have this another short series here of two things that were the result of that he got into a boat and sat down. So I'm going to label those first. Jesus got into a boat and sat down. And then I can come back to this statement of action and manner, seemingly. And great crowds gathered about him, so that he did these two things. He got into the boat and sat down. So we have an action, or I think I said action and manner. I mean action and result. Action and result. Here. And I can draw my arc over the top. And then I've come to the place in my arcing where I have four complete sentences arced. This first sentence, same day Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. Sentence number 2 is right here. Great crowds gathered about him, so that he got into the boat and sat down. Sentence number 3, and the whole crowd stood on the beach. Sentence number 4, and he told them many things in parables. And I think you could argue for a simple series, because we have and yet there seemingly is, in my mind, a progression leading up to the telling of this parable. And that's reinforced by the emotional temperature of the crowd, that when Jesus had gone and sat beside the sea, the crowds gathered about him, so that there was this result, that he was pushed, as it were, into this boat. So you may argue for a series. I'm going to label this as a progression between these four arcs and draw one arc over the top, looking to the eager expectation of the crowd, who was wanting to hear the parable, to the place where he told them many things in parables, and he opens his mouth and he says, a sower went out to sow, and he begins to share that parable with the people. But notice, for the purpose of our video today, the focus on action and result. that we're looking at a natural consequence, not the intention of the crowd. It's not as if the crowd got together and said, let's push Jesus into this boat so that he has to sit down. That wasn't their intention, but it was the result, or the natural consequence of their gathering around him and pressing him to the place where he had to step off of the shore into the boat and sit down before them as they stood on the beach. They're pressing. So there is an eager expectation to hear him, but this result in 2 BC is really the byproduct. Jesus being pushed into the boat is really the byproduct, not necessarily the intention. So what we might call the natural result of the crowds gathering around him with such pressing interest and eagerness that he was pushed in the boat. This is the result or the byproduct of that. And that's what you're looking for with action result over against the relationship, for instance, of action purpose that we'll look at in a separate video, where we're looking for intention and purpose. But right now we don't see any intention and purpose. We just see that their gathering was so eager that he was pressed into the boat and he sat down there. And that's what we're looking for with the relationship of action and result. And this is an example of how I would arc according to that logical relationship here in Matthew 13, 1-3.